Good morning, YouTube. Happy Tuesday. So I actually have two videos for you guys. The first video I'm going to do, I want you to check, of course, to check the other video out, but I'm going to do, this video is going to be about Joe Rogan and Candace Owens basically turning on Donald Trump. And they are speaking out against Trump for very different reasons. And so I want to break it out into two parts. I'm going to first deal with Joe Rogan and his complaint about the administration and what he's unhappy about. And then the second part is going to be about Candace Owens. I'm going to play a clip of both Joe Rogan and Candace Owens, but Candace Owens have some different concerns. And I believe their concerns kind of speak to an ideology that I believe is in the conservative party, and we're going to break that down and we're going to talk about that. So let's take a look at what Joe Rogan said, and then we'll talk about his commentary on the other side. So take a look.
Due process. No, fuck that. Well, here's the problem with fuck that. The problem with things that are going in a radical direction, and then there's an overcorrection. So the overcorrection is lack of due process. The overcorrection is like round them all up, ship them to jail. Like, that's like some things that you say when you're not thinking things through. Like, what do you do about all the criminals? Take them all, fucking send them to El Salvador.
Yeah.
What about due process? No, fuck that. But here's the problem with fuck that. What if you are an enemy of, let's not say any current president. Let's pretend we got a new president, totally new guy in 2028. And this is a common practice now of just rounding up gang members with no due process and shipping them to El Salvador. You're a gang member. No, I'm not. Prove it. What? I got to go to court. No,
Yeah.
no due process.
That's
Right?
dangerous, Joe.
That's dangerous.
dangerous.
That's dangerous. That's dangerous. We got to be careful that we don't become monsters while we're fighting monsters. I think due process exists for a reason, and the reason is it is horrific for someone to be accused of something they didn't do, be imprisoned for crimes they didn't commit, and then live in a cell, live in a cage with a bunch of
People who did commit shit.
Here it is, Benjamin Franklin. It's better 100 guilty persons should escape than one innocent person should suffer. That is wisdom.
Yeah.
That has survived hundreds of years. It's incredibly accurate, and it is the foundation of freedom. Like, we have to make sure that these people are actually guilty, otherwise we become monsters. You can't, like, what is that, when you fight monsters, be careful that you don't become one?
Become one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's very important. It's very important. You know, you can't do that. You know, it's one of those things where to support one side of this, you have to deny some, like, basic human values. Either way. Like, to support just rounding people up and just assuming they're all gang members. I'm not saying they're doing that, but this is the worst case scenario, right?
Yeah.
They get a bunch of people in a room, they rope them all in, and one guy's just someone's cousin picking someone up to give him a ride home. That's possible.
And now you're back on the one innocent person now you're right back.
And what if
with
that dude is not doing anything wrong and he's got some stupid tattoos and they decide that this guy's a gang member, and now you're in a prison in El Salvador and you're not even from El Salvador. And now, you know, you were just a hairdresser or you were just a tattoo artist,
Family
or whatever
man,
you are.
yeah.
You know, you came over here and maybe you got a green card and maybe you don't. Maybe you were just given asylum, because a lot of people from Venezuela were given asylum in America.
Yeah.
And then you get shipped to El Salvador where you're not even from El Salvador. So that the fact that exists scares the shit out of
So
me.
you guys seen what Joe Rogan was saying and basically his concern about the Trump administration, and it's basically about due process. And I've made several videos about this because I believe it's extremely important. I've told you guys in videos the reason I feel like due process is important, because in this country, black and brown people weren't necessarily, there was a time that black and brown people weren't necessarily afforded due process. And so there was a lot of times that we were already assumed to be guilty of something before the process actually played out. And it's the reason why it's imperative that due process stay in place, and due process is very, very important. Now, Joe Rogan basically was saying, if someone say that you're a gang member and they pick you up and you have no due process, you have no way to kind of fight your case, you have no way to prove that you are not a gang member, you do not deserve to be in jail, and of course that is very, very dangerous. And so here is what I believe is happening. Because it is my belief, and this is like a recurring thing, it is my belief that conservatives lack empathy. And it's difficult for them to see something unless it's going to happen to them. So I have two stories. My first story is, and it's not necessarily a story, this is something that everybody probably should know, is Nancy Reagan was adamantly against stem cell research until her husband, Ronald Reagan, was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. And so then she became a proponent and someone who supported it. And so it's disheartening when a person can't have empathy or compassion for someone else's situation until it becomes their situation. And I think this is what's happening because Joe Rogan basically pointed it out, and he was just like, there's a time, like now Donald Trump is in office, that's their guy. That's the person they support. So when it's a person you support and it's like he's advocating policies that are detrimental or dangerous to people, it's like, oh, okay, well, like he used the example, there's so many people who's like, oh, if they're criminals, just send them to El Salvador. And that's something that you say when your guy is in office. But you have to remember, our country swings. We go right to left. Like, not every election, because Obama had 8 years, then Trump got in, then Biden had only 4 years, and then Trump got in again. So our country swings. So it's fine. It's cool now if you are a Trump supporter, if you someone who advocates for Trump, it's fine now because your guy is in. But what happens when a Democrat or a more progressive candidate gets into office and now you're categorized as a gang member? Now you're denied due process. I'm sure your ideologies are going to change. I'm sure your stance is going to change. And like I said, if you have to understand that when we're talking about civil rights, when we're talking about human rights, it's imperative that we make sure we advocate for everyone, because it's like I always believe in that ideology. Once they're done with them, they're coming for you. There will be a time that there will be a progressive or a Democrat in office. Do you want progressives or Democrats doing the things that Donald Trump is doing? Because a logical person, a reasonable person, tend to put themselves in other people's shoes and say, okay, would I want this to happen to me? I look at every situation like that. Would I want this to happen to me? Would I want someone to just pick me up off the freaking street with my child and take me away because they believe that I am a gang member? They don't have any proof. There's no, at the time that they picked the guy up and sent him to El Salvador, at the time, they didn't have any proof. They didn't have any proof. They just said, according to his tattoos, all of these things, he's a gang member. That is very, very, very dangerous in the United States of America. And a country that has laws and constitutions, that is a very dangerous thing. That happens in dictatorships. That does not supposed to happen in a country like our country. And so conservatives and right-leaning people is just basically like, oh, well, he's a gangbanger. Who cares? What if a more progressive candidate were to get in office and they thought you were a gang member? Because think about this. What if a progressive or a Democrat believes you having a flag flying in the back of your F-150 is a sign of some kind of gang or white supremacist or white nationalist, and they believe that is enough to pick you up and take you to jail because you have a flag on the back of your truck? Because now if we're saying, oh, this person has tattoos, oh, this person had some type of jacket on that can be associated, because from my understanding, it was like a Chicago Bulls jacket that was interpreted as some type of gang affiliation. I lived in Chicago my whole life. Like, that was enough to pick somebody up and take them to jail? So what if somebody that's more progressive, more Democrat, they get into office in 2028 and they decide that you having a flag on the back of your truck is a sign that you're a white supremacist, and they pick you up, and because remember, you guys are now advocating for no due process, you don't have due process and you just go to jail. And what is your crime? You had a flag on the back of your truck. You will be absolutely beside yourself. And so this leads to my conversation that I had. So on weekends, I drive for Uber. Normally Saturdays, normally Sundays I rest, but just for extra money, I drive for Uber. You guys know I work in corporate America, but on Saturdays, I drive for Uber. So I live in a suburb that's very close to Indiana, right? Indiana, in my perspective, is super red. I had a commenter, and I believe she became a subscriber. So if you're listening to this, can you please comment on this story? Because I remember the woman was basically saying, I live in Indiana. I've always been a Democrat. But what I know from my personal experience, and what I know is that Indiana is not completely red. No place is completely red. No place is completely blue. But Indiana is more of a conservative Republican red state, right? So I pick up a ride and it takes me to Indiana. So to be extremely honest, I was thinking like, I'm going to turn my app off until I get back in Illinois, because I don't necessarily feel completely comfortable in red states. I'm just going to be completely honest. When I go to play, I have family in Houston, Texas. When I travel to red states, I don't ever feel completely comfortable being a black person. I'm just being honest. So I picked up this guy, right? So I picked up a ride that was close to my house, took them to Indiana, and I was going to turn the app off and wait until I get to Illinois to start back driving. But I was like, okay, it should be fine. I'm completely legal. God forbid if I get pulled over, whatever the case, I will be scared if I'm being honest, but my car is completely legal. I have great insurance. I have everything. I should be fine. So I'm like, okay, I'm just going to drive a little bit here in Indiana. At least it takes me back to Illinois, Chicago, whatever. And so I pick up this guy. This guy, I'm not exaggerating. This guy had to be 6'5". Big guy. Big white guy, right? You guys know in my car, I only listen to politics. I listen to Abby Phillips' podcast. I listen to Anderson Cooper, Jake Tapper. I just listen to mostly progressive and Democrat leaning podcasts, but I listen to some conservative podcasts as well. But at this time, Abby Phillips was playing, right? And so we're listening to the podcast, and at first we're just driving. He got in, he was really nice, huge man, big white man, but he was nice. So he was just sitting there, and I was driving, he was just sitting in the back, everything was fine. Mind you, it was early in the morning, so the sun wasn't out. It was kind of it wasn't dark, like dark, scary dark, but it was probably 5:36 a.m. So the sun was coming up, but it wasn't completely sunny outside. So I'm driving, and he was like, the first thing he said, he was like, I can't believe people still vote for Democrats. And I said, okay, well, some people believe, because I can't help it. Like, when it comes to politics, I can't help it, because when I was telling my friend this story, she was like, I just wouldn't have engaged. And I was just like, I literally cannot help it. Like, I can't, when somebody say anything regarding politics, it's something I'm so super passionate about. I say something, I couldn't help it. So he's like, I can't believe people still vote for Democrats. And I'm like, well, there's people who believe the same regarding Republicans. And he was just like, well, they vote for criminals and they want criminals in our country. And I was like, no, I don't believe that to be true. And he was like, well, you tell me, why would you vote for a Democrat? Started getting aggressive. So I probably should have just like kind of retreated and just not said anything, but it's not who I am. I can't help it. It's like, first of all, this is my car. Second of all, I know what you're saying is so ignorant and it lacks such decency. I'm like, that is not true. Well, what is your argument? What is your argument? I said, well, I'm like, I don't necessarily have an argument for you. I said, because it's already evident that you are in your camp and you don't want to have a conversation. I said, and that's the reason that we're probably at the end of our republic. What do you mean? I said due process, because they were talking about due process and the guy that was sent to El Salvador. That's what they were talking about on the podcast, on Abby's podcast. So I said due process is foundational to our nation. Well, these people don't deserve due process. I said they do. They're not Americans. I said in our Constitution, it says the minute your feet hit our nation, if you're illegal, I hate that word because people can't be illegal, only crimes can. But if you're illegal or legal, if you're a citizen or not, you're due process under our Constitution the minute your feet hit American soil. I don't believe that. I said, so you disagree with the Constitution? No, I am a constitutionalist. I love the Constitution. I said, well, what you're saying is against the Constitution. Well, this is what he said, well, my Constitution don't say that. your Constitution? I'm going to tell you why this is bigotry. Because there are certain people in this country who believe they are more of a patriot because of their identities, because of who they are and how they look. What is your Constitution? He said, my Constitution doesn't say that. There is only one Constitution, and it belongs to all of us. What is your Constitution? And so I was just like, you know what, sir? I said, listen, we are obviously on different sides of the aisle. You're getting upset. I don't have any reason to be upset. And maybe he felt like I was being patronizing. Maybe I was, because it's like, I don't want to talk to you because I know you don't know what you're talking about. And you're operating off emotion. And like I said, you're 6'4", a white man in Indiana. We probably shouldn't even be having this conversation. Let me just drop you off and you going about your way. But he kept pushing. And he was like, did you vote for Kamala Harris? I said, I did. I cannot believe people like you. It tells me everything about a person like you. Then because I was about to read them. I was going to read them, y'all. At that point, because I couldn't help myself, at that point, I didn't care that we were in Indiana. I don't care that you like a whole foot bigger than me. I didn't care because you sound ridiculous. You voted for a convicted felon who grabs vaginas. And you think you have the right to question my morality? It shows what type of person I am, that I voted for Kamala Harris, and you voted for a convicted felon who admitted to grabbing women's... Sir, it's like the audacity be on 1,000. It's like, he told before he left out of the car, he was pissed. He was so mad, and I was calm. I was calm for several reasons. I know what I'm talking about. And when you are confident in your argument, there's no reason to behave like that. You're mad because you're operating off emotions. And this is what you guys say about progressives and liberals. They're unreasonable. Everything is about emotion and how it makes people feel. You yelling and fussing and try to antagonize and attack my character because I voted for Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris is not a convicted felon. Kamala Harris has not said that she can shoot people on Fifth Avenue. Kamala Harris has not said that she wants to grab women or men by their private parts. So the fact that you think you have legs to stand on and attack me personally and my morality and who I am as a person because I voted for Kamala Harris, but you voted for a convicted felon. I said, when he got out, he was mad, y'all. He was piping, he was boiling. He was piping hot. I said, sir, you have a great day. People like you. People like me what, sir? What you want to say the N-word? What do you want to say, sir? What do you mean people like me? What is people like me? What exactly does that mean? Oh, okay. He got out. He went on about his way. I was laughing because to me, like I said previously, when you are confident in your argument, when you are confident in your position, when you are confident in what you believe, you don't act like that. You don't need to. I wasn't being combative with him. I wasn't being confrontational with him. I didn't yell at him. I kept my same tone. I basically told him what I think the thing is that once I told him what the Constitution actually say, instead of what he wanted it to say or his Constitution, it made him mad. Because at one point I said, well, I can actually show you where it says that whatever the case, due process in our laws. I don't care what you can show me. Okay. Okay. So it's like laws, rules, everything be damned. And that's the reason that people call it a cult. It's the reason because these people will make every excuse, every justification, everything for Donald Trump. And if you don't see it their way, they become contentious and combative and contrarian and mean. Because I'm like, it tells me a lot about people like you. Okay. History tells me a lot about people, but you know what? I'm going to digress because there's an art. And what I was trying to get him to understand, there's an argument that goes both ways. Just like you think people who vote Democrats are bad and evil, there's people who believe the same as you. But there's not going to be any forward moving until people start talking to each other and put aside the attacks and denigrating each other and actually start having a conversation. Because we can go back and forth, you're horrible, you're horrible, you're horrible, you're horrible. But how productive is that? And when I started talking to him like that, he didn't have anything to say. It was kind of like he wanted to argue. And I don't want to argue with you, sir, because facts are indeed stubborn things. And I know what it is. So it's no reason to argue. I'm just stating facts. Then he said something to the effect, I forgot this part. He said something to the effect that the guy had tattoos on his hands. Okay. It could have meant several things. We don't know. And that's why due process is important. It could have meant that he was in a gang and he left the gang and he came to America and he was starting a new life. Or it can mean that he's actively in the gang. It can mean both things. And that's the reason it's important to go through the process. And our Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, has tattoos all over his body. And I said that to him and he goes, well, he's not a criminal. I said, our president is. Those was not real charges. So now you don't believe in legality in our legal system. It's the reason people call it a cult. It's because they will justify, rationalize everything Donald Trump does. That is very, very scary. That is scary because this guy that deserves to be sent to El Salvador, according to them, it's because he's a criminal. But the country voted for a criminal that had due process. That criminal went through court and was convicted by his peers. So that criminal is that a good criminal? Then there's bad criminals, or so that was that. And so the second piece is Candace Owens, and we're going to talk about what her issue is with the administration and what her commentary was about on the other side. Take a look at this.
Administration is fighting against free speech in America. And that is very sad for me to say and to report as someone who has been a supporter of Donald Trump. We cannot allow our rights to be infringed upon. And if you think it's going to stop with college campuses, you're out of your mind. So you better buck up and root for Harvard University in this fight. You better hope that they defeat the Trump administration and this absurd definition. They even include parts of the Bible. They're like, you can't say that the Jews had anything to do with Christ, killing Christ, which is, you know what that is? It's not anti-Semitism, it's anti-Catholic.
Okay, you guys seen Candace Owens' commentary and what her issue is with the administration. You guys know I'm not a fan. I don't play with Candace Owens. I don't play with people who don't love black people. I don't play with people who has made a career out of being combative, antagonistic, disrespectful, denigrating to black people. So Candace Owens get no consideration, love, anything from me ever, ever. So I agree with what she's saying regarding this point. However, Candace, it's too late, sweetie. It's too late because the reason Candace is concerned, and this is the whole thing with conservatives and lacking empathy, Candace is concerned because she knows her rhetoric against Israel has been very intense. So she knows she's one of the people that can be rounded up, or one of the people who can be attacked or antagonized, or they can take her channel, they can take her livelihood. Now that it can possibly happen to her, she now wants to speak out about it. But Candace, sweetie, it's the reason it's imperative to fight and advocate for everybody's civil rights and human rights, because one day it could be you. It could be you one day. And now you're concerned. Now she bothers me. Because it's like you can't have compassion and empathy for somebody else's situation. You have to almost see that it's going to happen to you for you to care. She gets nothing from me. Because now you are all a Trump supporter, and Trump is about black people and all of these things. Now, in his second term, and you're no longer in his favor, you're no longer in Ben Shapiro's favor, now you want to speak out against things that people have been yelling for years. But now, because you've been talking against Israel, and people are saying that is considered hate speech, so now they want to come after your ability, your free speech, and your ability to speak your mind. If somebody agree or disagree, I completely disagree. But I completely disagree with coming after someone for free speech as well. All speech is supposed to be, well, there are exceptions. But we have freedom of speech in this country. It's imperative that people are able to express themselves. No, you should not be harmful. No, you should not be racist. No, you should not be bigoted. No, you should not say really horrible things. But in this country, you protect the speech, even the speech you do not like. That's the point of having a right. It's the reason that listen, there's people, because I do political commentary, there's people who've said there are some people who've said some really horrible things about me and to me in my comments. Horrible. I've been called the N-word. Those comments are normally filtered out, and I normally do not go through those comments. But one day I did, and I'm a super strong person. That stuff don't bother. I don't know you. I don't know you. I don't know you, so you saying something about me is not going to have much weight, because in order for me to care about what you think, I have to value your opinion. And if you're calling me the N-word or I deserve this or that, I don't value your opinion. So, okay. But they have a right to say it. It's mean, it's bad, it's inappropriate. It can be harmful to some people, but in this country, they have a right to say what they said to me. I didn't like it. I mean, I read it and was like, that wasn't nice, and went on about my life. They have a right to say it. That speech, and I know some people are going to disagree, but freedom of speech is you protect the speech, even the speech you do not like. Somebody calling me an N-word is not productive. It's not nice. But in our country, they have a right to say it. And if I were to see them in person, the things that I would say to them, I would have a right to say those things too. And I assure you, the N-word will be minor compared to what I would say to them. So they have a right to be horrific. They have a right to be like really bad humans. And if I were to see them in public. So they have a right to say it though. And we have to understand, and I know people have a problem with this, because people are like, that's horrible, that's bad, that shouldn't be the case. But it's the case in our country. You cannot go to jail for saying the N-word. It's bad. We know that. It's horrific. It makes them look idiotic and stupid and basic. But they have a constitutional right to be that horrible and say that word. They have the right to do that. And if we start like eliminating people's rights because it made us feel bad, that's not our country. We cannot do that. We cannot do that. There's other ways that they can have repercussions, but I can't stop someone from saying the N-word. And to be extremely honest, I don't have any desire to. That shows how horrific and disturbed you are. And it don't do anything to me, because I almost cursed. I don't care. Like, it don't bother me. And if we are on the streets, like, you gonna say your words and I'm gonna say my words, and I assure you, I got popped in my mouth my whole childhood. I can argue with the best of them. So it's like, have at it. Let's go. But I'm not going to stop you from saying it, because you have freedom of speech no matter how ugly it is. No matter how ugly your speech is. You can't do stuff like go in a crowded theater and yell fire and stuff like that, because people can be harmed. People can be hurt. But somebody walking up to me saying the N-word, my feelings wouldn't be hurt, but my feelings could be hurt, but it's not unconstitutional. It's not illegal to call somebody the N-word. It's not illegal to call people other negative, nasty words. And it's the reason that speech is supposed to be protected. I know it's a difficult argument to stomach, but it's what's in our Constitution. You protect the speech you don't like. You advocate, which sounds crazy, because it's like, you want me to advocate and support the speech I don't like? Yes, because you don't want a person telling you what you can say. And it's in our Constitution. There are some guardrails, not many, because the Constitution is supposed to be absolute. This is what it is. This is what the law of the land is. And freedom of speech is the law of the land. Somebody saying the N-word to me is not illegal. It's not unconstitutional. It's not anything that I can call the police and get them arrested for. It's ugly. It's nasty. It's bad, but it's legal. It's constitutional. And so shutting down speech, I'm not for it. So I agree wholeheartedly with Candace Owens regarding that. My problem with her is, it ain't a problem until you're on the receiving end of the backlash. Now that you can be rounded up or targeted, now you want to advocate and speak to this, right? So now you're like, oh, Donald Trump is squashing free speech. Donald Trump has been doing a lot of things he's not supposed to do, and you were okay with it because it wasn't going to negatively affect you. Now that it can possibly negatively affect you, you want to call it out. That is the reason why no one will ever have any empathy or sympathy for you. And no one will ever advocate for you, because I believe this is a thing that happens with conservatives. I do. I really believe that. And I cited the Nancy Reagan, Ronald Reagan situation. It's like, until it hits their doorstep, they're not concerned about it. It's like, oh yeah, forget due process, just get them all out, push them all out. But what happens when you are considered a criminal? You don't want any due process for yourself. And you can't make the argument, well, I'm an American, because our Constitution covers people who are in our country, if they are legal citizens or illegal citizens, or, illegal, not citizens, but, people who are here illegally. Our Constitution covers them too. So it's the reason it's imperative to advocate due process no matter who the person is. Because one day it can be you. That is my commentary. It got a lot longer than I anticipated, but I can talk about this stuff. I can talk about this stuff all day. So I want you guys to like, comment, and subscribe. Make sure to comment what you believe and what you think. And because this is a conversation that, have you ever had a situation where you can literally argue both sides? I can argue both sides, but I lean heavily towards the due process is always necessary, always, always, always. I lean heavy towards the freedom of speech is freedom of speech. We can't start parsing out what we want to tolerate and what we don't want to tolerate. Freedom of speech is freedom of speech. So you guys let me know where you are regarding those topics, and I will talk to you later. Again, like, comment, and subscribe. Bye. Have a great day.